The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
You are now tuned in to the PA Power Podcast, featuring Jeff Upson and Eric Knopsynder. PA Power Wrestling. PA Power Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
What's going on, wrestling fans? You are now tuned in to the PA Power Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Upson, joined as always by Eric Knopsynder. And Eric, it's been a crazy summer. We actually haven't been on the air since Fargo. Maybe not a lot has gone on in wrestling world, but I know personally and maybe professionally a lot's been going on between you and I. So, but the latest news is kickball. We are champions of kickball.
We are the Team Tyler Kickball Tournament champions. A dominating run through the bracket on Saturday. Perfect 7-0 performance by the PA Power team, and just unbelievable how much fun. Why do we stop playing kickball when we're kids? This is a thing that should continue for life.
Right, like dodgeball too.
Yeah,
I think that,
absolutely.
I think it feels really good to be number one. As Ricky Bobby said, if you're not first or last. So PA Power came home with the team title there. And Eric, we may actually be doing another tournament, kickball tournament, that we're actually going to be hosting because it was so much fun.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. So the way this all started is I know a family who has a little boy with a disease called NNF that causes tumors all over his body, and the kickball tournament was to raise some money to fight the disease and do research for that. And so it was a good cause. We wanted a PA Power team. We had a few guys lined up that for various reasons didn't work out that had PA Power ties, but we were able to put together a team that also includes some people like Paul Miers, who is going to be our tournament director for the Surge, going to be helping us out with that. A couple of other volunteers, including Tyler Mortar and Jason Cornell, the former Berlin coach. Strong wrestling backgrounds, love the sport, and just want to be able to help out. And when they heard I was putting together a team for the tournament, they were all in, and they just, like I said, everybody that played just had such a good time. As soon as it was we got there, everybody kind of bonded, and it was really funny because for the most part, this was teams that were kind of put together. Everybody knew Tyler and his family, and they were there to have fun. We were there to have fun as well, but we were also there to win. And so
right.
we were probably, let's just say we were a lot more competitive than most of the teams there. We're taking it a little more seriously than they were.
Well, hopefully, the next time we play, we bring the competition.
Yeah.
Because we kind of, we walk through our amateur league at 7-0, but, we're going to try to put together a tournament with some high quality athletes, so to speak. But,
I've put out a lot of feelers and have gotten a great response so far. I think I contacted over 30 coaches and or team representatives about the possibility of getting a team in our kickball tournament, which is going to be Sunday, September 23rd here in the Johnstown area. And I've heard back from, I would guess, probably half of those so far. And everyone who's responded is really interested in it. And I think I have about 8 that have already committed and said, yes, we're bringing a team. So this has all grown in literally about 2 days. So the speed at which it's progressed is just amazing.
And it's quite, like you said, it's for a good cause. And this one we're gonna donate to pinning down Pinning Cancer.
Yes, yeah. That's a charity that I've worked with before through our border brawl that we do here in the Johnstown area, and great cause. So yeah, we've got all these wrestlers, a lot of former wrestlers, some current wrestlers. UPJ alumni team is already committed; they want to be in it. So a lot of fun stuff, and as you said, for a great cause. And I honestly, I just can't wait for it. I think it's going to be such a fun day.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun, and it's going to be a great experience. And I mean, like you said, why did we stop playing kickball as kids? Because this is a lot of fun.
Well, I think a lot of our players realized on Monday or on Sunday why they stopped playing kickball as kids, because they don't have quite the the muscle ability to rebound as they did in the past. But everybody's feeling a little sore. But yeah, it was so much fun. Like I said, we have a group text going from this team that's like 130 texts in right now that everybody's just chiming in on what we can do for the tournament. It was actually their idea. They said, hey, this was so much fun. Why doesn't PA Power put together a tournament? We'll play other wrestling teams. And
there you go.
We might even have a team of officials, referees that are going to come and play. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So anybody who's interested, like I said, it's Sunday, September 23rd in the Johnstown area, close to Forest Hills High School. And it is $20 a player, and you can have a team of 10 to 14 players. And we'll get all the details sorted out. But if you're interested, follow me. Send us a message on Twitter, either at PA Power Wrestle or Knops Notes, and get in touch with us, and we'll get the info to you and see if we can get you in.
But you're not going to win, because we're going to be there playing, right? and the team of referees. I mean, they might as well not show up.
Well, we're going to play them. We're going to make sure that we somehow arrange the pools so that we get to play the refs.
Yeah, I'll do the bracket pools, and we'll just so happen to be in the same pool as them.
I don't know that I want like the UPJ alumni though.
I don't want them. I don't want I don't want any Law brothers. I don't want any. We don't need the Forest Hills alumni or even the UPJ.
The Richland one looks pretty stacked too, because they got some good athletes on there. The Pecora brothers, and
So what you're saying is we have our
we could be in trouble, but we'll have a lot of fun with it.
Okay, all right. Well, that's September 23rd, and then coming up very soon after that, it's sneaking up on us, is the Surge, our inaugural tournament that we're hosting up at Pitt Johnstown.
Yes, this would be the wrestling variety tournament, not the kickball kind.
Correct. Right. Not that we shouldn't include kickball somehow in it.
We're trying to figure out if we can get Flo to do a live broadcast of the kickball tournament.
As they should. I mean, they do marching band, for goodness sakes.
Yeah, it's got to be more exciting than marching band.
It's got to be more exciting. Can you imagine Mark Bader, calling the kickball action? I mean, I think that would be a lot of fun in itself to watch that. But yes, the Surge is a wrestling tournament. Okay, it's going to be a lot of fun. We already have a ton of big names that are committed to competing on November 3rd and November 4th. Again, it's at Pitt Johnstown, and we're super excited about this. We've been wanting to hold a tournament for a couple years now, and it just so happens that things sort of came together at the right time for us, and we're going to make it happen. So we're really excited about this. We're going to put a lot of energy into this tournament and to try to make it the best tournament, preseason tournament in the state of Pennsylvania. So when we look at sort of what our goals were, Eric, I think it's important to understand that our goal as a general rule of thumb is to grow wrestling and to enhance the coverage of wrestling in the state of Pennsylvania. We're the number one state in the nation, and we should have the number one coverage of those wrestlers. So the Surge is just a way for us to really highlight and showcase those top quality wrestlers that we have in the state of Pennsylvania and from surrounding states as well, to provide a high quality preseason tournament where you don't necessarily have to drive maybe 9.5, 10 hours, right?
Yeah, that's one of the things we love about this is that a lot of people can be here within a few hour drive. As you said, not just Pennsylvania, which it's going to be almost all Pennsylvania. Don't be misled there. It's not going to be a lot of out-of-state guys, but we do have some interest from Ohio, from New York. I know quite a few Maryland kids are interested in coming up. So there is some interest from out of state, but this is going to be a great chance to focus on that PA power that we have here in both AA and AAA, which is kind of nice that we can get the mix there of both levels and kind of see where everybody stands heading into the season.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, the location is perfect. I mean, when having a tournament in Pennsylvania that's high quality and gets a lot of excitement around it, I think is a good thing for our state and for our wrestlers. And that wasn't a dig at the Super 32, because the Super 32 is arguably one of the best tournaments in the nation, regardless of time of year.
And honestly, the way I look at it is, the Super 32 is so good that a lot of times some of our really good wrestlers in Pennsylvania here that, are possible state medalists, that type of kid can go down there and just because the bracket is so brutal, go 0-2 or 1-2 or 2-2 and have that long trip, that long grind, all that, and not get that many matches out of it. So that's what I love about the Surge is that these kids can stay a little closer to home or a lot closer to home and get some really good competition and get more matches in.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have we seen it? Even state champions, state medalists that go down to Super 32, and that, like you said, they go 1-2. They get 3 matches, and you spend a good amount of money traveling that far and taking time away from home, and it's not that that's a bad thing. I think all competition, I think any mat time is good for a wrestler. I know when I was growing up, I would go to Lock Haven Fall Classic because it was very close and it was relatively cheap, right? And it wasn't very far for me to drive from Harrisburg up there. And, you want to shake off that rust a little bit, but a lot of these wrestlers, these high quality wrestlers, they're wrestling year round. They're really committed to the sport of wrestling. So you look at it and you say, well, the Surge is an opportunity for you to really showcase that here in the state of Pennsylvania. And I think being that we're the top state in the nation, why should we not have a premier preseason tournament where all the best Pennsylvania wrestlers want to go to show like, hey, I'm for real this season. I put in a lot of work in the off season. I'm here to showcase my talents. Whether you're moving up in weight, maybe you're at a different school, maybe your team has moved up to AAA or down to AA, and you really want to show what you've been working on. Well, this is a chance to do that.
Well, and obviously the nice thing for us is it makes our job a little easier in that we can see all these kids in person that we haven't seen maybe since March or, maybe a little bit in freestyle, but haven't seen them and making those jumps, that progress that they've put in all that work over the summer that you're talking about. So we can see them. We can see how they've developed. We've seen how their technique has gotten better. And that makes our job a lot easier when we start cranking out the rankings to say, hey, I saw this kid at the Surge and I saw how much he's improved and how much better he is than he was last year.
And it's all, and I think of a tournament like the Super 32 where, we've been covering it for a couple of years now, and it's such a hard tournament, even with Pennsylvania wrestlers, because there's so many of them there and trying to keep an eye on all of them. And you may miss half their matches because you're running around like a chicken with its head cut off. So, it 100% makes our job easier because when we come out with our grade rankings and our preseason state rankings, the preseason state rankings are the hardest rankings. And a lot of other ranking experts will say, I don't even do preseason because it's not worth it. There's a demand there for preseason. Look at college preseason football. They come out with them like 2 months, 3 months before the season even starts because fans are hungry for that type of coverage. With wrestling, it shouldn't be any different. Like, we should be able to give you an outlook. We should be talking wrestling all season, and you should be excited about wrestling all year round, including the preseason. So why not have an event where we can actually see in person these kids and really gives us a baseline for our preseason rankings, not to mention our top incoming freshmen. That's one of the biggest areas I like because I've been doing the top incoming freshmen for over 5 years now, and every year I miss somebody, and every year somebody sneaks up on you. And this is a chance for freshmen to really come in and prove their worth against upperclassmen.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And going back for a minute to what you were saying about the importance of the rankings, a lot of people like to say, well, rankings don't mean anything because it's wrestling and you can show on the mat what you can do, you can prove yourself. And that's all true. That's well and good. But I'll tell you one thing, a lot of college coaches look at our rankings and they want to know opinions about what these kids are like. And this is a great opportunity not only to show us, but to show some of those college coaches in person before they get too far down the recruiting road what they're looking at in some of these kids. So this is a great opportunity. We're hoping to have a great turnout of not only wrestlers, but some college coaches there as well to get a look at some of these kids firsthand and see what they're doing.
Yeah, I 100% agree, Eric. And, we fortunately do have a good following where a lot of coaches, college coaches from all levels are interested in seeing where these guys come in ranked. And we see it from the early ranks, from junior high all the way up through senior year of high school. I mean, kids want to have their name out there, right? And I think this is just another way. And this isn't for elite wrestlers. This is for all levels of wrestlers. And if you've been working your tail off in the offseason and you feel like, hey, I'm going to go from a sectional qualifier to a regional qualifier next year, I want you to come out here and wrestle. It shouldn't be just for state champions, state medalists. This is for all levels of wrestlers to just want to show what they can do.
Yeah, I think anybody that has postseason aspirations, whatever those may be, whether it is state champ, state medalist, state qualifier, regional qualifier, whatever, just getting to that sectional and district tournament, those are the kids that we want here, the kids that want to show that and want to see where they are now, and then we can see how they've developed throughout the season, where they get to. And I think this is just a great bookend, the opening bookend to that season. And then, obviously we'll close it up come Hershey in March.
Yeah, and I'm super excited about the tournament. I know you and I, Eric, have been working, around the clock on the surge and getting everything in order. And again, it's November 3rd and 4th at Pitt Johnstown. You can go on and register on Flow Wrestling. If you go to Flow Arena, you click on November, you'll see the Surge by PA Power Wrestling. Just go ahead and click on that, and you can register. Pre-registration is open up until October 1st, Eric, is that correct?
Yeah, it's $45 if you register right now. October 1st, the price goes up to $60. So you're going to want to get in now. Don't worry about weights. Put the weight in, but you can change it later if it comes to that. Just get the registrations in now because we've got to get everything rolling. We want to do all kinds of stuff ahead of it. We're going to have bios on wrestlers, looking at stuff, as we said, rankings, just doing everything we can to get wrestlers' names out there to college coaches, get them out there, get them some publicity, and, as you said, grow the sport.
Yeah, absolutely, Eric. And looking forward to that. If you have any questions on that, you can email us, jeff.upson@papowerwrestling.com or eric.knopsynder@papowerwrestling.com. But we're looking forward to the Surge coming up here in really a few short months. It's sneaking up on us. Yeah,
it's you look at it and you say, well, it's only August, but it's going so quickly because, as we said, we've got the kickball tournament that's less than a month away, and then by the time we get to that, we're like, wow, the Surge is going to be there really quickly.
Really quick. So there's been a lot of off-season news, off-season chatter, as there always is. I mean, this is every season. That off-season type of things that are happening and we want to report on. But there's been some shifting of some wrestlers, Eric, and I know you have a one in your area that it's kind of a big one.
Yeah, it is. I had kind of heard rumors about it, but wasn't able to get any confirmation. I saw today that Ryan Spring from the Bedford Gazette confirmed on his blog that Kaden Cassidy, who was he third in the state as a freshman a couple years ago?
Third in the state as a freshman.
At Bishop McCourt. Then he wrestled for Chestnut Ridge last year, and now he's actually back to the school where he was when he was younger, Bedford. So kind of a weird situation with him. I know his parents like to buy and flip houses, so I think he told me that Kaden told me that this is the 16th house that he's lived in now. The one that they just bought in Bedford. So he's, I don't know. I know everybody likes to think that this is all about wrestling and making moves for that, but it does seem kind of like they're a family that just likes the challenge of buying a house and turning it over quickly and then moving on to something else. So he's going to be back at Bedford from what I've heard. As I said, I haven't been able to talk to him personally in a couple weeks to get that confirmed, but that's what Ryan Spring has reported, that he's definitely going to be at Bedford this year. So that's a big change, not just for Bedford, which is a program that struggled a little bit in the past couple of years, but for Chestnut Ridge, which didn't get the full Kaden Cassidy last year. He had a thumb injury and ended up missing most of the season, including all of the postseason. And so that was really, if you looked at Chestnut Ridge this year, you thought, man, they're going to be loaded again. And I think they'll still be very good. But obviously, if you take a PIAA medalist and potential finalist or winner even out of your lineup, that's going to hurt.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the first thing I was thinking of is, what does this do to Chestnut Ridge? Because, I mean, as you said, Bedford, they've had their ups and downs over the last couple of years. But Chestnut Ridge, I mean, they're a team that is always in the hunt for a top 4 finish at the state dual team tournament. So what does this do to them when they have a guy like Justin McCoy who graduated, Kaden not really being in and out of the lineup last year hurt them. So, yeah, I mean, good for Bedford. I mean, I know Bedford's got to be happy to have him back. I know there probably was a little animosity when he ended up going to Bishop McCourt.
Yeah, you could say that. They are bitter rivals, Bedford and Chestnut Ridge.
So I'm sure they're happy to have him back. Well,
they are, and they also just went through a coaching change. Brian Krebs, who had been the coach there for, I forget what it was, probably 12 years at least, has stepped down, and Joel Easter has taken over as head coach there. So got a kind of a infusion of a different coach. You got Kaden Cassidy coming in, so definitely things looking up for Bedford right now.
Yeah, and he's someone you can build around. I mean, he's a guy who, being in the room with Kaden is going to make people better just by the nature of being there beside him and working out with him. So, definitely a good thing for Bedford. Definitely not a good thing for Chestnut Ridge, who's got to find some way to regenerate that talent in the lower weights, because I know that's one of the areas where, Kai Burkett is returning. So, I mean, he figures to do well there for them, but definitely a hit that they're taking.
Yeah, I mean, Chestnut Ridge always seems to find solid guys, but as you said, you can't just
where do they find them at, Eric?
They have an unbelievable booster program. They do such a great job from the elementary level up. I know I joked with one of the elementary coaches a couple years ago. I saw him talking to a little kid, and he was essentially bribing him with candy, like, "Hey, come to wrestling practice. We give out some candy sometimes."
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. I never once received a piece of candy from wrestling.
Well, hey, it seems to be working for him.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's like a total of 100 students at Chestnut Ridge. I mean, it's a small school, and yet they're always one of the top teams in the state. So, another guy who's making a move, and this one made a little bit more headline because it's the nature of where he is, and that's Jonathan Miers from Easton, is going to be heading to Wyoming Seminary. Now, most of you will remember he's a guy who last year state medalist. However, he missed weight, and there were some issues with him and Coach Jamar Billman. There was some family issues going on there where there was some racial slurs being thrown from one side, and there was just a lot of negative publicity that wrestling did not need. But it did culminate with Jonathan transferring, so to speak, from Easton to Wyoming Seminary, which, of course, it doesn't matter because Wyoming Seminary is in the national prep, so it's not like going from a public to public. But still a huge hit for a team like Easton Red Rovers. I mean, I know I saw Willie Saylor and Brad Wilson going, into it a little bit, and Easton is wrestling. I mean, when anyone leaves Easton, that's a huge deal.
Well, the whole Lehigh Valley, and it seems like a lot of the focus the past couple of weeks has been on the Lehigh Valley and the moves that are going on there, because I mean, let's face it, they have so many good teams in that area, and the move of one into or out of a school district, or in this case to a prep school, can really kind of drastically change and swing the balance of power there.
Yeah, it certainly can. I mean, this is and I was talking with our college guys and Rob Waltko and Joe Youngblood. I mean, this is not a new trend, right? I mean, especially in the Lehigh Valley. I mean, there's always been guys shifting around, moving around, and that's sort of just been kind of the norm out that way in District 11. But as you said, anytime it involves such high talented wrestlers, it's going to make headlines, and especially for a team like Easton, where the tradition there is so strong. I mean, they're the Notre Dame of wrestling in Pennsylvania. I mean, they have such good tradition.
Speaking of Notre Dame,
well, yeah, to have a guy like Jonathan Miers leaving there, it definitely raises some questions about internally what's going on, and I don't know if that's an isolated incident where, he's the one leaving. Everyone else is good to go, and I know they brought in former head coach Steve Powell, who's literally a living legend, to come on as sort of an advisory role to really help guide that ship. So, he's going to be going to Wyoming Seminary, where he figures to probably be one of the top guys in the nation for the national preps, competing at 138, 145. And I did hear Moshe Schwartz is going back to Colorado, possibly, so that does open up some room for him.
Yeah, I did see that. I mean, as you well know, and we've talked to Wyoming Seminary guys, just getting in the lineup there is quite an accomplishment. If you're starting for them, then you're headed on the right path. Yeah, I mean, starting for them means you're probably going to be top 8 at national preps, probably top 4, actually, realistically, and nowadays. So, that in itself is a pretty tough job to accomplish. Another guy who's going to be coming in to District 11 is Dashawn Farber. Now, this is a guy who I was very keen on when he was growing up through the PJW ranks and JOs. He was a guy who was 4th at the PJW Junior High State Championship in 2016. But I remember actually messaging him on Facebook or Twitter, and because I was thinking, like, well, hey, what team are you going to be on next year? He's like, oh, I'm going to Georgia. I'm moving down to Georgia. So he left Pennsylvania for 2 years, but he's coming back. And, oh, by the way, he only won 2 Georgia State championships in their largest class, 6A, the last 2 years. Has been really, really solid down there in high school. But obviously we know Georgia is no Pennsylvania. It's not, but I tell you what, Georgia has been cranking out a lot of good kids recently. They have some really talented guys. So don't sleep on Georgia and say, oh, well, he won 2 titles, but it was only in Georgia. I mean, he's definitely going to come here and make some noise. Yeah, and Georgia as a state doesn't have a ton of depth, but I mean, some of their just studs, some of their just top quality guys are really, really good. So, Dashawn Farber, he was originally East Stroudsburg area. He's going to be coming back to Pennsylvania, and he's going to be attending Nazareth, which, that's not too shabby. Yeah, a little bit of wrestling tradition there at Nazareth, I believe. Yeah, I think so. So, I'm huge on Dashawn Farber. I got to see actually some of his matches from the Georgia State tournament the last 2 years, because he wrestled for Dark Knights and they were always posting things, and I was thinking, oh man, I really wish he was still in Pennsylvania type thing, so I was really happy to hear that he's coming back to Pennsylvania. As I mentioned, he was a state 4th place finisher in PJWs in 2016. In 2015, he was a state runner-up in the 11 and 12-year-old division. So the kid's he's got talent. There's no question about that. He's been competing with some of the biggest names that we have now in Pennsylvania. I mean, he was beating, if not, really close with a lot of those guys. So you've got to figure, being in a room like Nazareth, wrestling that schedule, he's gonna be, making an impact pretty early, I think. What kind of size is he at now? Do you know? Do you know what where he might be when he gets back this season? I would say probably around the 145, 152 weight he's put on in the offseason, but I would say 45, 52, and complement that Nazareth Blue Eagles lineup pretty nicely, I would say. He's going to have a good time next year, I think. You know where a good place for him to showcase his skills would be? I think it would be the Surge. Yeah. I absolutely do think it's the Surge. And what a nice, welcome home, celebration you could have at the Surge. And, because there's a lot of people that they may not follow PJWs and youth wrestling, and they say, oh, who's this 2-time state champ from Georgia who's coming back to Pennsylvania? And, you get to see him in action. So, yeah, I think we should definitely try to recruit him to come on board and compete at the Surge. You got to be careful with that recruit word, Jeff. That's a dirty word in high school sports right now. Yeah. Persuade him to compete in the tournament. It's not like this is a PIAA sanctioned event, so I can say really whatever I want. Okay, I think. All right. I think. But thank you, Eric, for the heads up for being just trying careful. To save you some headaches there. Oh, well, you know me and headaches. I get a few of them from folks across the state. But another, probably the biggest change of the offseason, and this is like
reminiscent of Spencer Lee going from Sagertown to Franklin Regional before his freshman year. Ryan Crookham from Saucon Valley area, he was a Super 32 champion as an 8th grader last year. He is the top-rated freshman in the entire nation. Flo has him as the top freshman for the entire nation. He's going to be attending, wait for it, Notre Dame Green Pond.
Yeah, this was huge. I didn't know anything about this. Brad Wilson, who I think is arguably the top wrestling writer in the state, broke this. He's all over the Lehigh Valley, knows everything that's going on there, and I didn't realize that Green Pond was really in the running for Ryan. So this was huge news to me.
Yeah, Eric. I mean, and I have to second that what you said about Brad Wilson. Great reporter out in the Lehigh Valley area, and he's on top of it. I mean, he works so hard, so he keeps us on our toes for sure. But Ryan, yeah, and there's a lot of backstory here, right? So Ryan has been one of the top names in Pennsylvania wrestling, at least in the youth ranks, for the last, I would say, 3 to 4 years. He's been at several different in several different areas throughout his youth. Neshaminy, he wrestled at Bethlehem Catholic in their junior high, Saucon Valley. So the talent is there. So obviously you're going to look to see, hey, what's best for me academically and athletically. And you look at Notre Dame Green Pond, which it feels weird calling it Notre Dame Green Pond because it's just Notre Dame out that way. But Notre Dame, they're a different kind of team now because of the coaching change, and this is really, I think, the key component here for Ryan competing for Notre Dame. And you look at Notre Dame and the transition that they've had. The last 4 years at the helm for Notre Dame was John McGuire, who, if that rings a bell, his son Ryan McGuire was a very highly accomplished wrestler for Notre Dame, and the last 4 years he's done very well. In fact, last year Notre Dame had 5 guys make it to the state tournament. So, for a smaller parochial school in the Lehigh Valley area, that's pretty good competing in Double A. So they had 5 guys make it to the state tournament, 4 of which actually return next year. Richie Markukulis is the guy who really is leading that charge. He's been one of the top guys in the state in his weight for a couple years now. But Ryan coming into Notre Dame, I think their new head coach, and Matt Veras, really has a lot to do with that. This is a guy who's just he's really well known in that area. He runs a wrestling club, Lost Boys. He's been associated with Weaver Elite. He's sort of been bouncing around from different schools in that area, and I think a lot of kids and a lot of parents really like him as a coach.
Now, I mean, this might be jumping the gun a little bit here, but is this a situation where we could see what happened with Bethlehem Catholic, where Notre Dame could all of a sudden become kind of the destination for a lot of these top-end Lehigh Valley kids, and all of a sudden they go from a school that, was doing okay and, did really well last year to one that is going to be a real powerhouse in Double A?
I mean, I think we saw it kind of transpire with a little bit with Bishop McCourt when they had some really big names coming in, but they didn't have the depth. I think the difference here, and you look at Notre Dame, and I think they are more reminiscent of Bethlehem Catholic in that sense that they've had success in the past. They're not building anything from scratch. They're building upon some things, some foundation that's already been placed there in Notre Dame. So, yeah, I mean, I think it is a little early to start saying, well, Notre Dame's going to be, one of the best teams in the state in Double A. Are they going to be competing? Absolutely. I mean, Ryan Crookham just alone is going to put them sort of on the map, kind of like Thane Lawrence did with Fraser. People are going to be hearing, and even like Chance Marstow with Kennerdale. Kennerdale had, some decent success before Chance came along, but once he was there, everyone in the nation knew Chance Marstow was associated with Kennerdale, right? So I think Ryan has the potential to have that type of impact on Notre Dame. So, I mean, this is this is really big for them as a program to have a guy as big as a name as him to be coming in. And yeah, with a surrounding cast that you already are returning, plus I'm hearing things that there may be some other top incoming freshmen that are going to be heading to Notre Dame. They could really potentially have themselves a really good tournament team, maybe even a really good dual tournament team. And we've seen that kind of happen with St. Joe's Catholic in Boalsburg, and they've had some really, really high-end talent. But, do they have the depth to really field a full complement of a dual team? I don't know. I think time will tell. Yeah,
and St. Joe's was kind of a startup program the same way Bishop McCourt was. So Notre Dame definitely has more of a background there, more of a lineage that they're kind of building on. And then you bring in a guy like Verez, who had that Bethlehem Catholic background, who's been in that area in the Lehigh Valley, came from New Jersey right across the border. I think that is just a program that could rise really quickly. But now the interesting part is, in addition to, you got Crookham, who is obviously going to give even more name recognition to that program and get more kids interested in going there and competing there. But we haven't talked yet about the new changes to the PIAA and what those could mean for potential transfers.
Yeah, that's obviously an issue that we're going to touch upon, because that's what is in the back of everyone's mind. And for those who don't know, Notre Dame it's a private Catholic school in Bethlehem Township. It's actually right near Easton, and it's a private school, right? It's much like Bethlehem Catholic. So you look at that and you look at some of the things that have been happening in the PIAA. Now, wrestling hasn't been really on the forefront of those conversations. In fact, I wouldn't even say they were in the rear. I don't even know if the thoughts exist, because it's all basketball and football. However, when you look at wrestling and the really strong push that we've been seeing across the state for the PIAA to separate private and public schools, have a different state championship for them, what does this do potentially to a program like Notre Dame and Bethlehem Catholic, for that matter?
I have a little different take on it. Where I am, you're right, basketball and football are the biggest just because they're the biggest sports. But you come to the Johnstown area, and there's still a lot of animosity in Districts 5 and District 6 towards the Bishop McCourts and the St. Joe's, who – I'm not saying that they're doing anything wrong. I'm not saying they're doing anything illegal, but there are a lot of people who feel that they're doing illegal recruiting. They have an unfair advantage, and that it's not right for them to be in the same classifications, certainly in the dual meet. I don't know that people complain too much in individual tournaments about a kid being on a Catholic team or a private school team versus a public school team. But when they're trying to compete for team championships, I think that's when the focus really gets put on that, and whether or not there's an unfair advantage there.
If you get rid of the dual team championships, you get rid of the problem in wrestling, because I really don't think individually, that's what we pride ourselves on in wrestling is, I'm a huge proponent I'm a fan of, I think there only should be one class. Because that's you're really a true state. Like when I saw Georgia has 6 different state championships. Do you have any pride in saying you're one of 6 state champions in your weight class? That's at least in Pennsylvania there's only 2. But individually, I don't think it's an issue. I agree with you, Eric. I think it's more the team dynamics where people are upset because of teams and boundary schools and non-boundary schools, some having access to more kids, and you really can't challenge much when it comes to a private school. So yeah, I definitely see where a lot of people, especially in your area, like you said, St. Joe's and Bishop McCourt, those schools, yes, I understand where people are somewhat upset about it. However,
yeah, I had a coach last year who's been, I would guess probably for 15 years, a head coach, tell me that the reason that he's going to get out of wrestling, and it'll probably happen in the next couple of years, is because of the private schools. Because he's so frustrated to see a public school program, build a kid up from, first, second, third grade to 7th grade, 8th grade, and then he leaves for a private school in 9th grade. And they feel like all that time and all that effort that they put in working with this kid and his family and building him up, and now they've just turned him over to somebody else while his own public school program is struggling to find a warm body to put in that spot where this kid could have been a state medalist.
Yeah, and that's a really valid argument. And, I think you look at it from a reasonable perspective. There's arguments on both sides, right? There's arguments that make sense on both sides, and I definitely can emphasize, really be empathetic towards a coach that you said has put in the work on growing their skills as a wrestler throughout their youth and middle school years, and then all of a sudden, they lose them to a school 10 miles down the road, and now you have to compete against them. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons to be upset with that. But at the end of the day, what are we ever going to please everybody? No, absolutely not. We're never. Someone's always going to be upset. Someone's always going to be unhappy. However, it's if we really truly want to grow the sport of wrestling, which I think most high school coaches would, is I want to see the best competition regardless. If it's on my team or the opposing team, I want to have the best quality wrestlers on the mat so fans get excited and, we can start filling these high school gyms back up because, right now the gyms for dual meets are nearly empty.
But again, to me, and this isn't just wrestling, I have covered sports in, a variety of different sports, whether it's football, basketball, whatever. And I noticed that for the most part, the crowds at private schools tend to be a lot smaller because there isn't that community identity behind a private school. Whenever you have a Chestnut Ridge, you go to a Chestnut Ridge dual meet and there aren't empty seats. The whole community is behind them. They're, everybody is about
Reynolds.
that.
Reynolds. Reynolds is the same way.
Right. And obviously those are schools that have pretty good tradition that have, they're not new programs. It's not new to them. People have grown up with the sport. But, and again, this translates to other sports. If you go to a PIAA championship game between two private or charter schools, especially in basketball, the crowds are tiny because you just don't have an entire town going. If you get the Hoosiers type team from the movie, the little town that makes it to the state championship game, that whole town is going there because even if you don't have a son or daughter playing on that team, your neighbor's kid's on it, and the guy that you grew up with in high school 20 years ago, his son is on that team. And so you're going to support that. Whereas I just don't see that with the private schools, that it's basically the parents of the kids that are playing.
Yeah. No, I tend to agree with you as much as that pains me. But, you're right. The private schools, you may see a little bit less of and you look at this from I don't know, an outside perspective, I guess, trying to take the wrestling lenses off and look at it. Even taking like a high school athletic lens off of that, and you try to make sense of this, and people getting really, really upset. Like you said, it's to the point where somebody who's been involved in wrestling for over 20 years is stepping away from the sport because of the frustration surrounding it. So, this is this isn't a made up thing, right? This is actually, a real issue, and I think the PIAA needs to set some type of standard, some type of parameter where, it's, you can sort of try to appease the masses. And right now, from what I've been reading, there's a lot of movement behind this anti, private and anti sort of competing in the same state championships. There seems like there's a lot of momentum behind that. So you're going to have to start listening to them and start adhering to some of their demands.
Yeah, and I think that they did take a good first step towards appeasing some of this, in that they're really kind of changing the way they look at transfers, and they've taken a much more of a hardline approach on the transfers, where they set the date that's already passed last week, that if you're not enrolled in the school at that point and you transfer after I think it's already after your freshman year, right? Like if you can transfer in as a freshman, but if you're already in a high school and you transfer, then you're going to have to sit out the postseason, which is obviously a pretty drastic step to take.
That's huge.
But, I know personally, like I've heard of schools that are saying, well, we didn't get this kid in by August 6th, so, he's not going to be coming.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very interesting dynamic, and I'm sure a few years from now, the landscape might look a little bit different as it usually happens. But I don't know. I'm very, I guess you could say, undecided in this situation, and I think I have personal feelings towards some and not so on the other. But I really just want the entire state of wrestling in Pennsylvania to be kind of on the same page, as opposed to not being such. So, because I think it hurts us in the long run, especially when we're competing against, like, let football and basketball be sort of the whiners and complainers, and wrestlers, we kind of just sort of really just do what we do and really don't cry and whine about it. At least you're not supposed to. And I think that's one thing that makes wrestling so special, is that we kind of put up or shut up. And I don't know. That's the kind of mentality I have a little bit in life. But however, I do understand, that perspective of, well, how am I supposed to build a program when my kids are leaving, right? So there's no easy solution. And there's opinions that range from, all private schools should be banned from the state to hey, you can just go wherever you want, and if you want to change your school this week to next week, sure, go ahead. But I mean, I think somewhere the PIAA has to draw a line and make some type of hard line decision, I guess, because I think, and me personally, I think in the past they've been sort of like on the fence, but not willing to commit so much. Like they don't want to really ruffle any feathers. So
my opinion is that they've tried to ignore this as much as possible. I mean,
this is not happening.
They're just sitting in Hershey with their eyes covered with their eyes shut and their hands over their ears and just like, nope, everything's fine. La 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 la.
Well, it's they're going to have to start listening, because I mean that
when schools start threatening to pull out of the PIAA, that got their attention.
Yeah. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. But at the end of the day, as long as there's wrestling, I'm happy. But I swear, if they put it to 3 classes, I'm gonna. You may see me go off on a tie.
Yeah, that would be a huge mistake.
I agree, but I've heard things like that before, and
I was not a proponent of going to the 20-man brackets in Hershey either. I think.
Well, they may be switching back to 16. We're not sure yet. The steering committee still got to meet and talk about things such as the number of state entrants for the state tournament. So that could be something that is a hot topic. So we'll keep you posted on that, but. I don't want to get so far down the rabbit hole, Eric, that you like to drag me down. So I'd like to go back to talking about Matt Veres, from the new head coach from Notre Dame, and just give you a little bit of credentials. So first of all, he wrestled at Blair Academy.
That's not a bad start.
If you wear a Blair Academy wrestling, like I remember I was at a youth tournament when I was like probably 13 years old, and my dad told me, he's like, Jeff, the guy you're wrestling is wearing a Blair Academy sweatshirt. You're probably going to lose. And I was like,
what kind of dad says that to his kid?
Well, I mean, he's a
straight
realist,
shooter. Huh? Yeah.
Yeah, he's a realist. So I did lose. I went out and lost, but I didn't like get decked, So just wearing a Blair Academy sweatshirt before a match warming up is enough to strike fear in your opponent. However, Matt Veres actually wrestled for them and won 137 matches, was a 3-time National Prep All-American. He went on to compete at Franklin Marshall, but he had some injuries and it was kind of cut short. So as I mentioned, Eric, Matt's been sort of around the block in Lehigh Valley. He's been at several different locations, including Bethlehem Catholic, where he was the youth coach for a number of years, I think 2007 to 2013. So he was there for quite a while. I know he was involved in Weaver Elite Wrestling Club out in that way. And, of course, You had guys like Randy Cruz that were there, Darian Cruz, and a lot of those big name guys at Weaver Elite. So I know he was out there, but he was also started his own club, which was Lost Boys Wrestling Club. He started that recently. I think it was probably last year when we started seeing things come from Lost Boys Wrestling Club. And he was also the freshman head coach for the Liberty team for at least the last year. So, I mean, as I said, he's got a lot of different people that he's been exposed to over the last 10 years, and I think that is going to help him build a program around Notre Dame, and I think he really brings a lot of support. I think he's a guy who parents and wrestlers alike really enjoy him being a coach.
Yeah, great resume. He's obviously got the chops there to back up the taking over a program like Green Pond, Notre Dame Green Pond, and then, as we said, having a guy like Ryan Crookham come in can only really raise the profile and the expectations there. I'm
very curious to see how these situations pan out with, possibly some other big names, big freshmen coming in to Notre Dame and really seeing where this program goes in the future, which is interesting because I feel like Phillipsburg, New Jersey is kind of taking over Lehigh Valley because Rick Thompson, who was just an absolute stud for Phillipsburg, is now the head coach at Bethlehem Catholic. So we had mentioned with the Cruzes and the Karams, and recently Jeff Karam, it was probably a few months ago now, he stepped down as the head coach of Bethlehem Catholic. But Rick Thompson from Phillipsburg takes over. He's been in Pennsylvania, though. He coached at Bangor most recently, but he's also coached at Phillipsburg, Franklin, New Jersey, Voorhees, and Hackettstown, New Jersey. So if you remember, and I certainly remember this when Phillipsburg and Easton were going just, their rivalry is just so strong. But he was there, and his teams, I think, won somewhere around like 8 state championships, team state championships in New Jersey. So he's a guy who is accustomed to winning, right? It's like going from the Celtics to the Lakers. Like you got a really good foundation for success. So Rick Thompson, I know, is a guy who is going to build on the work that Jeff Karam has done.
Yeah, the whole Lehigh Valley kind of blends into Phillipsburg, as you said there. Easton, huge rivalry. So not really too much of a change. I think they probably see that the state line is not too big of a barrier there between that whole region and how things work. So, thrilled to have another great coach in Pennsylvania. As you said, he's been here for a little while, but another guy that can really hopefully elevate some of these kids and continue to churn out great wrestlers.
Yeah, I agree, Eric. And, I'm very curious to see like sort of the changing of the guard almost, because, Jeff Karam was such a figure in that Bethlehem Catholic program for a number of years. And, I was actually pretty sad to see him go because I really like, interviewing Jeff and hearing his thoughts because he's not afraid to tell you how he feels, number one. and number two, I think he's he really cares about his wrestlers. So, I know he wasn't always the fan favorites, definitely for sure, but someone who I think was good for Bethlehem Catholic. So I'm very curious to see how Coach Thompson is going to do out in Bethlehem Catholic. And they returned quite a few studs, including Ryan Anderson, returning state champion. So they're going to be a pretty good program yet again in 2018 and 2019.
Yeah, I don't think that you're going to see a massive drop-off by any means in Bethlehem Catholic. But as I said before, I just wonder if the Crookham move kind of signals almost a changing of the guard where now guys that are looking to get that Catholic school education and go a different route than the public school might be looking at Notre Dame instead of Bethlehem Catholic.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a viable option now, especially with Matt Bears there. I mean, I think that helps them with some notoriety and sort of that name brand recognition, if you will. However, I still think Bethlehem Catholic just has such a good foundation that's probably still, if you're going to go the Catholic route, Bethlehem Catholic is probably the. Now, I don't know much academically how different they are, but I would imagine if you're factoring in, athletics, that Bethlehem Catholic is definitely a school that is going to be up there. So it's, as you mentioned, changing the guard. I mean, for so many years, it was Bethlehem Catholic and Dubway, and you had teams like Bowling Springs and Reynolds and Fort LaBeouf. But, even Forest Hills for a number of years just were dominant. And I'm seeing now, it's like fast forward to 2018, 2019, St. Joe's Catholic, Notre Dame, where do they fall into the mix with some of these powerhouse traditionally strong schools? Can they really come on? I mean, I was a part of one. Central Dauphin was not, when I talk about Central Dauphin wrestling now, people are like, man, oh wow, it's such a good program. And it's like, yeah, when I was there, we were good, but we weren't winning state championship after state championships, so, seeing how teams sort of progress and develop over the years. I mean, everyone goes through their ups and downs, but it looks like Notre Dame and St. Joe's Catholic, they're definitely on the upswing.
Yeah, and that's sports are definitely cyclical. Wrestling no different than any of the others. It's really difficult to see a program like Reynolds that has been good for so long, and let's be honest, they're not. They get accused of recruiting and bringing kids in from out of the area and things as well, that they're not immune to that, even though they're a public school. And that's one of the things that the private school supporters say is, hey, look, this isn't only a problem. Transfers isn't only a problem for private schools. There are a lot of them. But I think a lot of the feeling is that the private schools can just get really good really quickly, a lot easier than a public school can with a finite boundary that they have to stick to.
Well, Mason Beckman actually told me that Reynolds has never gotten any recruits. So
then it's absolutely. So there is no more a fair judge of Reynolds wrestling than Mason Beckman.
I would appreciate if you retracted that statement before Mason comes up from George Mason and delivers a.
Well, see, if he'd have played on my kickball team last weekend like he was supposed to, then maybe I wouldn't have brought that up. But
listen. He's got bigger fish to fry than you.
He does.
Right now,
he's landing recruits for George Mason and doing a heck of a job there.
Yeah, I mean, and it is a good point. I mean, it's not like public schools are immune to these things. I mean, let's be realistic. This is something that's been going on more so in public over the last 10, 20 years than it has private. It's just now becoming more of as a you're getting good so fast. It's as you see like a St. Joe's. I mean, you get 4 of the top incoming freshmen from one class, and now all of a sudden you're really, really good. That can happen almost overnight. So, yeah, I mean, there's again, how did you pull me down that rabbit hole yet again? I want to stop.
It's what the people are talking about, though.
Yeah, but it's just like it's so exhausting to talk about. I feel like I spent my childhood on wrestling forums, reading posts about transfers, Northampton, Easton, and Central Dauphin, and you name it. It's overwhelming. It's tiring, Eric. I'm tired.
Sorry to wear you
out, man. No, it's
one more private school note. We mentioned a little bit before Bishop McCourt. And right now, they still don't have a head coach. There was talk of a very, very big name who, none of it was public, so I'm not gonna put his name out there. But there was talk of him being hired. But once that magic August 6th date came and went, and he wasn't hired, then no one new could kind of follow him into the district and be competing in the postseason this year. So I'm not sure what's going to happen there, kind of still up in the air. I have heard that and I'm not sure, they might have gotten another kid or two in already before that August 6th date who was, a pretty solid kid, but nothing firm that I can report there as to what's happening with Bishop McCourt. But they're definitely trying to make another splash with their head coaching hire.
Well, and as you mentioned, that August 6th date, and now that it's passed, it's like, well, all right, where you are, you kind of say that's where you're going to be. And if you opt to move in after this, you're not competing in the postseason. So, I'm very curious to see where everyone's at this point, because, theory would say that if someone's moving in after this date, it's kind of a moot point because they're not going to be able to compete in the postseason. But I don't know. Very interested to see how the next couple of weeks go once schools start coming back into session and seeing what familiar faces we start seeing. I love it because, you'll have that wrestler that changes school, and of course they play football. So the first time you hear of someone being at a new school, they're like, "Oh, I heard so-and-so joined the football team at, wherever." And you're like, "Oh, okay. Well, what kind of impact does that have on the wrestling team?"
Yeah, it's fun to kind of see that. And as you said, we should know, with school starting here in the next couple of weeks in Pennsylvania, where everybody is and kind of sort all that out. I'm just interested to see if there's more this year just because of that date that everybody's like, okay, I got to get in ahead of this, or how it's all going to work out.
Yeah, I'm curious as well. Apparently the fans are too, Eric. So I guess we're going to have to revisit this topic yet again. On
giving the people what they want, Jeff. That's what I do.
Gosh, like you're a man of the people, Eric. Despite what Mark Billett says, you're a man of the people.
Wow.
So, yeah, it feels good to get back in the saddle and talking some wrestling. So, we are really excited about the Surge and Kickball. So, if you're a wrestler and you're listening to this and you want to compete in the Surge, I implore you to do it and do it now, because spots are running out. And as Eric mentioned, the price does increase on October 1st. So, and you can change weights up until the tournament. So it's not a huge deal if you're not sure which weight you're going to go, because that can change. But you definitely want to secure a spot soon. So, yeah, Eric, Kickball champions. We're really going to make a new name for ourselves. We're going to be the PA Power Kickball League here in a little bit. We should probably start a kickball podcast.
Hey, it worked for Flow. Like you said, they got marching band, they got track, they got bull riding, I don't know, bocce ball, whatever they have.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's weird.
I don't know if we could have a PA Power Kickball.
Okay.
I'm telling you.
All right, well, I'll let you run with that, okay? Well, hey, Eric, it was great catching up with you, and wrestling fans, it was great catching up with you as well. Stay tuned to all the wrestling news and updates from across the state at PAPowerWrestling.com. Eric, I know one thing that I'm going to be releasing very shortly is the grade rankings for the class of 2019. We've been seeing a lot of guys committing. Guys like Cam Connor from Kiski area committed to Penn. There's been some other names that have been committing, but the class of 2019 rankings will be coming out in the next couple of days, so be on the lookout for that. But in the meantime, follow us on Twitter at PA Power Wrestle. Like us on Facebook. Eric, I'm sure you're going to have lots of photos on Instagram of championship trophies and things like that from Kickball, so you should probably check out those as well. That's what we do. We win championships here. That's like Bo Nichols said, right? That's what this is. PA Power. That's what we do. Oh man, this is gonna be good. This is gonna be a fun year, fun season coming up. We're gonna try to make as many Bo Nichols references as possible, because anytime he opens his mouth, it's just gold. So, kind of like you know when he talked about dodgeball. Remember at Media Day last year, and he talked about how he improved his skills in dodgeball. He did. That was gold. I bet he would be a big proponent of starting a dodgeball league as well. So we'll have to get on that. Talk to Bo. I was a little nervous. I was trying to get young guns into the kickball tournament, and I was really worried that they were going to bring like Nulf and his wife, who's a soccer player, and just completely load their team up and destroy us. But I'm thinking that's not going to happen now that they're kind of busy. So it's going to be more high school teams taking us on. Okay, good, because I don't want to be embarrassed by something like that. So. I've gotten beat enough in my life. It doesn't have to happen again. So, and going along those lines with the Surge, and this is what I love about the Surge, is because when someone comes back and says they don't like where they're ranked preseason, or they don't like where they're ranked in the grade rankings, my response is simply going to be, okay, prove it. Okay, come to the Surge, and that's our hashtag, which I think is great. It's hashtag prove it, because you have a chance to come to the Surge and prove it to us in person where you belong. So, I mean, yeah, I think I already said this once in the podcast. It's, put up or shut up type thing. So hopefully we get a lot of people coming to put it up at the Surge, Pitt Johnstown.
Yeah, I think we're going to. A lot of excitement out there about it, and a lot of people are going to jump on those spots. I know, especially with the price going up October 1st, people are going to be getting locked in there and make sure they have that spot.
Well, Eric, until next time, stay tuned in PAPowerWrestling.com for all your wrestling needs.